Everybody likes to quote Mike Tyson and say that everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. Well, this was our turn to do the punching. As you can see, Ben and I came through this small group, Ben doing 10 plus watts per kilogram. And as we hit the Clyde, he went up to 11. I hit about 12, 13 watts per kilogram.
Let's go all the way! Touchdown!
And that was the beginning of the end of this race. All right, so this is the Glasgow crit circuit on the Z Racing Cityscape series. And as you saw, Ben and I had a plan from the get-go, and we executed that plan flawlessly. Uh, Partly because Ben, he is a fantastic racer, fantastic rider on the Dirty Watts team. And so we went out like any other race, going out, just trying to, I try to push a little bit hard. I didn't want to go, 500 watts out the gate, but, holding hard enough, still feeling out the virtual gears. I still have race mode enabled. In the last few races, things have worked great. And so I don't want to jinx myself, but things have worked great. And so as we got out the pen, just kind of pushing. And one thing I've noticed when it comes to the races, now I'm racing in the 510 to 650 category, which is, I guess, considered the A category since there was nothing above it in this time range. And so it being an A category race, it's, I would have thought we would be going out a lot harder. But what I've seen recently is the races tend to be kind of, I don't want to say mild, but you know, we're not averaging over 300 watts the whole time. We're staying in the 200s, sometimes even going down into the upper 100s and just kind of coasting along. And so I didn't want that to be the case. And this is where, on Ryan's video that I will continuously go back to and reference, when he talked about 20-minute power, this is where your 20-minute power comes in handy. When a race is going to end up being slow, and if you have the power to make the race the way you want it to be raced, where you're pushing harder, you're causing people to chase, or you're just causing people to exhaust themselves because they need to keep up with you, even though they are drafting. If I jump on the front, I might be doing 3.5 watts or more per kilogram, which is my 20-minute power. I might be doing that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody else is doing that. Everybody else is going to be doing something less, probably 2.5, 3, if that, if they're close enough off the back. And so in a way it is I am wasting watts because I'm not conserving energy and I'm not drafting. But also, if I can push a pace, if I had a higher 20-minute power, let's say I had a 4 watts per kilogram 20-minute power. If I'm pushing 4 watts for 20 minutes and everybody else is having to stay above their threshold just to keep up, that is going to hurt them in the long run. And for me, that's just going to be my normal, everyday, fitness. And so as we hit the Clyde kicker here, gave a nice, decent push, nothing crazy. I'm continuously practicing pushing over the top because I tend to, slow down right at the crest of the top, and that, ultimately drops my speed significantly. And so as I end up on the front here, I just kind of keep pushing through. Now I'm seeing this AHDR rider, Hannon, who, I was trying to see whether or not there's another rider in the group that looked like I had the same jersey. And so I wasn't sure if they were on the same team or not. But I wanted to just kind of keep an eye on them because, Hannon was basically tied to my hip. Anytime I pushed forward, he was there, or he or she was there. Or anytime, like you'll, see in a little bit, Hannon ends up going off the front and staying out for a little while. And so I'm going to jump forward to that just because I brought it up. And so here we go. Hannon moved up to the front and just started pushing the watts a little bit. Right now he's at 3.7, you know, 3.4, not, not going crazy, but still pushing a little bit harder now into the 4 watts, 4.1. And so I see this gap starting to get created. I'm feeling good. I'm still only doing, 200-ish watts, mid to low 200s. So I'm okay where I'm at. I'm a few meters off the back of him, but I'm not worried about, losing him in this. And, just to make sure I play around with the gears and just, make sure I stay close enough attached to where I can, if I need to, shift up a gear or two and then, jump onto the back of his wheel, I'm within range to do that. And so as Hannah just kind of continues to go up, I just, again, I'm staying right there. Our average at this point, or my average at this point, is 274, which is just under my FTP. My FTP right now is 289, and so it's, it's a good pace. It's my heart rate's looking good. In the 150, upper 150s, low 160s. That's kind of a moderate pace for me. That's a good spot. That means I'm not overexerting myself, and still in a position where I can conserve energy. And so as we hit the next round for the Clyde, um, it's going to be essentially a bunch of the same things. So I'm going to jump forward to the next main event here. And so as we make it through not only the backside of the Clyde, but that secondary hill after the Clyde, and we're starting to come down and around the corner, here goes Hannah again off the front and pushing. And, I wasn't sure whether or not Hannah was trying to attack or trying to, you know, I don't, I couldn't quite tell what the plan was. What I can tell you is that, Hannon has a pretty decent power. According to Zwift Power, or sorry, the Zwift Racing app, which I am do my best to get it. All right. So according to the Zwift Racing app, Hannon has a 4.41 5-minute power, 4.25 20-minute power. Now depending on his weight, then that's gonna kind of play a role in what kind of raw wattage he's able to push out. But in theory, if he wanted to, you know, throw the hammer down and hold me at 4+ watts per kilogram for 20 minutes, I would have a hard time, keep, holding on. And so I think that's kind of the game that Hannon was playing. I think he was trying to, just use his 20-minute power in order to kind of set the tone for the race. Now, I can tell you going into the race, myself and Ben probably had the strongest sprints of everybody. And so that, Hannon having or making the choice to stay off the front, push to make sure that I'm working to stay on his wheel. Now, he wasn't really pushing hard enough, but, him pushing just to make sure I stay on his wheel is really the right move, because if he can't match my sprint, then there's no point in us going to the line together. Hannon's got to break me in a way that, he ensures that I'm not coming up to that final sprint with him. And so again, I think that's, if you do the right research and kind of, look at whether it's Zwift Racing app or Zwift Power to see who you're going up against, that's always a strategy to keep in your tool belt. And so as we round the corner here again for the fourth time going up the Clyde, I initially thought I would try and go here. Now I saw a video earlier. If you look on Strava, the KOM for the Clyde kickers 18 seconds, and the person that set that record actually started from around this point in the city, like just before the actual start of the KOM itself. And so he essentially went into this corner sprinting already doing, close to 2000 watts. Now this person is a, world championship track cyclist. So he's got the raw power to be able to do that. And he came around the corner doing 2000 watts and basically held 1400 to 1600 watts going up the Clyde itself, and managed to get an 18-second KOM on this climb. And so I knew that, if I was gonna break my PR on the Clyde, I would have to push hard from the start. But the way I was feeling at this point, going up, like I said before, I initially thought I would do it on this one, but my legs were hurting. My legs were sore because we were pushing 5, 6, 700 watts each time going up the Clyde. Now, one thing I will say about strategy when it comes to Glasgow is as you get to the bottom of this hill, start ramping up your speed because once you hit that bottom, if you're in the 100 plus RPM range, you could easily sprint up the top with some good momentum, and it's not as painful than waiting till you hit the hill and the resistance turns on and then cranking the power. And so that, as you can see, has worked for me successfully many a times. Again, Hannon's on the front. Um, pushing ahead. And so that's, like I said, that's helped me many a times on this course. And this race specifically where we're going around 6 times, that, you know, every time I had to go around, it made that part of the climb effortless, truly effortless. And so as we round the corner again, we're getting ready to kind of come up to where the actual church building is at and where the Zwifty maneuver officially, sets in motion. As you see, Ben lets me know, hey, on the uh, next way around the Clyde, we are going to hammer it. And that again was part of our conversation that we had prior to the race, and talking about being able to break our PRs going up the climb. And so, as we round the corner, just doing our best to kind of sit in and, let let this group kind of roll as it is. And so here we go again, coming to the Clyde. And as you saw in the beginning of the video, Ben starts to ramp it up at a good spot, pulls through, and then do my best to jump on his wheel. But he gapped me real quick. He got about 3 seconds on me in no time. And so I did my best to, push hard up the Clyde. I honestly did not know I had that in me. And then I busted it out and I was like, wow, that hurt. That hurt. And so you see people pushing a little bit harder up the climb, but we've already got 3 seconds, on them. And so as we're coming down the hill, I eased off the power just a little bit. I didn't want to ease off too far, but I eased off the power just a little bit. We've got about 5 seconds now. And so I ramp up, push as hard as I can, because now I want to catch up to Ben and see if we can TT this all the way home. Because we've got about 4 kilometers to go. And while that is a supremely long distance, right now we have 7 seconds on the group. And so I catch up to Ben, push through, because at this point I'm like, all right, I'm gonna push my 20-minute power to the max. I'm gonna hold it as long as I can, see if I can, see if I can get a PR on my 5 to 20 minute power range. I don't know exactly how long we have left, and so at this point it is just pushing where I can in order to maintain the pressure. Obviously, Ben stays behind me, in order to just kind of, you know, keep ultimately keep that support, on kind of what I'm doing here, because we didn't talk about this. We didn't talk about us trying to do a breakaway off the front, from that attack. We just talked about attacking the climb um, in order to set new PRs. But as as I normally do, if I'm going to attack, I'm going to attack, and I'm going to go and I'm going to push as hard as I can. I'm going to push as long as I can. And so as we round the corner again, I'm doing my best to just kind of, stay in a gear that I know I can hold, this mid 300 ish wattage, until I can't, ultimately until I can't, and right now we're holding about 6, 7 seconds on the group. We start getting through the champion sprint here, and I'm just trying to hold the mid 3 watts per kilogram, 3.5, 3.6, and then as it starts to ramp up, just kind of continuing to push the power, because again I don't want to fall off the back, or I don't want to lose too much time, in this breakaway, but at the same time I want to maintain that gap. You see we've got about 4 seconds still on the group, and we're kind of holding it there. And as we start to get closer and closer, I'm at this point, I'm struggling. My heart rate's in the 170s, upper 170s. I'm starting to feel the fatigue in my muscles. I'm holding, 100 plus RPMs, trying to do what I can in order to keep this up. Right now, again, we're back at 4 seconds on the group. You see, Tanner off the back, 5 6 seconds. So at this point, I know that Hannah and Rydell are the two that are really going to be the ones that set the precedence when it comes to bringing us back. They're the ones that are going to be working the hardest to bring us back. You see, Hannah right now is doing 4 watts ish per kilogram. Tanner's doing about 2.8, 3-ish, 2.8 to 3, somewhere around there. And so they're pushing it. They're at this point trying to close that gap. And we got about 5 seconds on them. We're getting around to the Clyde once again. Ben goes up to the front. I'm doing my best to get some rest on his wheel. And as we start to hit the climb, we just do our best to stay on the power, because this is where so right now they're at 6 seconds. Us going uphill, if we maintain our speed and, really push as hard as we can, that gap will grow. And you'll start to see right now, again, they're at 6 7 seconds. They're slowly starting to fade back, 7 seconds now. So as they're climbing, they're not pushing as hard as we are. And that's the key to maintaining this gap overall. And so we hit the top of the Clyde again. I push through. You see Ben launch um, his power up. I launch my power up just to, get over the top of this hill with some efficiency. I should have launched it earlier, but I wasn't paying attention because I was focused on just, trying to push as hard as I can. Right now, I got a second on Ben, but he's not, he's basically in my draft at this point still. And so as we hit this slope again, we're still 5 6 seconds ahead of the group and pushing hard. I lower my wattage a bit, and then again spin back up to as hard as I can, punch over the top, doing 730 watts. And as we come down the backside, I'd start to ease my watts down a little bit. I dropped, I went down about 4 or 5 gears to see if I can spin higher as I came over these humps, because I was noticing. So I'm on the SL8 with the disc wheels, and as you get to the top of these hills, you lose quite a bit of momentum. So I was trying to do my best to find a spot where I can be in a low enough gear where I can spin fast and keep my momentum going over the hill. And so as we start to hit this downhill and kind of approaching the church where the Zwifty maneuver would traditionally start, I see that Rydell's um, come up behind me. Tanner's come up behind me. Ben is in there behind them, which is probably the best spot to be in. I Because of all the clutter I have down at the bottom of my screen, I couldn't quite tell where they were at, but I knew they were behind me. And so as we hit the hill, I initially was gonna launch, but I was like, you know what? I don't have the momentum I would need with them in front of me in order to pull a strong Zwifty maneuver. So I backed down the power a little bit because I wanted them to get in front of me and kind of feel like I had nothing left. And so, of course, they get in front of me. I start shifting up gears in order to, make, make myself ready for the sprint. I get into gear 21. I see Rydell starts to go off the front. I launch my aero boost and start to go. I see Ben's going. And so I'm trying to hold on to Ben's wheel as best as possible. I end up shifting up to gear 24. And you see that I really had to get on the pedal in order to work that gear, because, man, it tightened up real tight on me. And so as we came across the line, Ben came in first. I came in second. Um, Rydell and Tanner came in fourth and fifth, which was fantastic on them. Hannon came in fifth. And I've got to say, Hannon did a lot of work this race, a lot of work. I know you won't quite see it because I, clipped a lot of it out, but Hannon did a lot of work. So bravo to him for, really making this race what it was. And so, with that being said, this is why if you can ride with friends, it's always better. It truly is. We like to have a lot of fun. So if you're into this style racing, check out the description. All the discords that I'm in are there. Um, you know, message me, message any of the guys. We all try to coordinate when we're going to race. Typically, we race these on Mondays, but because I'm not in the same racing category as JD, who I normally race it with on Mondays. I've been racing them as I can. Plus, I've been prioritizing ladder races on Mondays as well, since I'm no longer in the same category as JD. And so, again, jump into the discords, get connected with us, and whenever we're racing, come join in. We'll have some fun, and yeah, I will catch you guys on the next race.
Hey guys, it's Miguel from that thing you just watched. Hope you enjoyed that video, whether it was topic on nutrition or racing or a combination of both. Feel free to come back. I will continue to put out videos like this and continue to showcase what you can do with smart nutritional strategies, combining that with racing, because that is what this channel is all about. And feel free to check in if you want to see more racing. Click on wherever the link's at, subscribe, and I will catch you guys on the next race.